Greetings and salutations everyone, my name is Andrew Kirchhoff and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're talking about my hidden gems for week 9 of the 2020 fantasy football season. Last night on Thursday Night Football, the snap occurred once again. Players like Jermichael Hasty, Robert Tonyan disappeared from our lineups right before our very eyes and absolutely gave us dud performances. Not only that, but players that are currently sitting in our starting lineups like Chris Carson are going to be out for this upcoming week. How do we react to that? Well, we are going to find these 6 hidden gems that are scattered across the multiverse and plug them into our lineups to not only give us a better chance in winning in week 9, but to at least give us better players going forward. I'll talk about players that aren't owned in very many leagues in Yahoo Fantasy. And I'll also talk about players that, yes, like J.K. Dobbins, are owned in 77% of leagues, but perhaps you're not considering starting them this week. I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of an extra perspective, my opinion, as to why I think these players can have great performances this week and give you guys an extra chance to win in week 9. Before we begin today's video, I want to thank you guys for the incredible support, helping us surpass 33,000 subscribers. We are on our way to 34,000. So if you haven't yet already, click that subscribe button, join the community. Also down in the description of the video, besides timestamps, there is the link to our Discord server. For those of you who are trying to find extra advice, all things related to fantasy football, you can click that and join there. For those of you who aren't familiar with Discord, it's pretty much a text and voice communication service that's free to the public. You can join, talk to us. We're talking all things fantasy football all day long. So for those of you who are interested, take advantage of that. Outside of that, click the like button down below. Make sure you leave a comment. And let's get into our week 9 hidden gems. Starting off with J.K. Dobbins as our power stone. We traveled to Vormir, aka Baltimore, to collect J.K. Dobbins. And why is J.K. Dobbins the power stone? As I mentioned before, he's already owned in 77% of Yahoo leagues, which as of right now probably isn't available for you to go out and pick up. But the reason I wanted to bring up J.K. Dobbins is because a lot of people aren't kind of looking at his performance from last week and giving him enough respect as to starting him potentially this upcoming week. I know last week he played against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and boy did he play incredibly. He had 15 carries for 113 overall rushing yards, had himself 2 targets, 1 reception for 8 yards, and played 66% of the offensive snaps. It's a pretty large chunk considering the fact that Gus Edwards just had as many carries as J.K. Dobbins and was just as active in this backfield. But Dobbins is definitely the guy that they want to rely upon in the passing game and potentially as a pass blocker on third downs. So they have him more and more involved in the rotation, especially considering Mark Ingram has been out with the ankle injury. So where exactly do I kind of see J.K. Dobbins this upcoming week? Not only did they run the ball 30 times between J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards against the best run-stopping defense in the National Football League last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but this upcoming week they take on another good defense that has always been great against the run this year, the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I don't think that the Indianapolis Colts are completely immune to having a running game succeed against them. We've seen it already this year. Dalvin Cook had himself 16 fantasy points against them in a half PPR scoring format. Kareem Hunt had 16.8 against them. Joe Mixon the other day had 13.9, along with Giovanni Bernard almost getting to that 10-point mark. So again, we have seen running backs succeed against this defense, and that's just more recently. So again, as the season has progressed, teams are beginning to figure out how to run the ball effectively and score against the Indianapolis Colts defense. But when we're talking about a team like the Baltimore Ravens, one of the best running teams in the National Football League, a team that set the record for the most rushing yards by a team in NFL history in 2019, I think they're progressively getting back to that kind of culture and that kind of rhythm of where they're running the ball as consistently as they want to and imposing their will on defenses. Now, I understand Ronnie Stanley, their all-pro left tackle, the $100 million man, is out for the season with the ankle injury, but I still see this team as a run-first team. They're running the ball 54% of the time right now as an offense. I mean, that is pretty ridiculous in the National Football League right now, considering how high-scoring events are back and forth. Typically, teams want to throw the ball as much as they possibly can, but not the Ravens. They are running the ball as consistently as possible this season. So where do I see J.K. Dobbins? I went and I watched the film from the Pittsburgh Steelers game. He averaged 7.53 yards per carry and didn't have a single, not even a single, negative run. Now, the way that they used J.K. Dobbins was unlike the usage of Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is a guy that you can just plug up the middle, and they even use him as a fullback on the goal line to get his rushing touchdown. But Gus Edwards is a guy that's running in between the tackles. On the other hand, J.K. Dobbins is the guy that they're letting on the outside. They're running stretch, zone, speed option on the outside and letting him get into free space and make defenders miss. The way that they have him running looks like exactly what he was doing at Ohio State. The guy was running through lanes and not even getting tackled until 5 yards down the field. He was gashing the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, and I absolutely think they could once again accomplish that against the Indianapolis Colts this week. They let him on the outside. This guy's got deadly speed. He'll definitely take advantage of it, and I think J.K. Dobbins, who's not really being played very often this week, is a great option and potential pickup and play if he's available in your league. J.K. Dobbins is our power stone for this week. Now we can go ahead and move on to our next hidden gem for this upcoming week. We travel to find the space stone, yes, in DJ Chark. Now many of you may be thinking DJ Chark's already owned in 89% of leagues, and he's probably, in your lineup and probably an automatic play. But a lot of you guys, in my opinion, from what I've seen in the comment section, a lot of the questions that I've been facing and a lot of the lineups that I've seen, a lot of you guys have DJ Chark on your bench, and it really shouldn't be a surprise considering his contributions and his total points put up in the last couple of weeks. Now, obviously, they went on bye in week 8, but the 2 weeks prior, DJ Chark hasn't really been himself, even though he has seen a total of 21 targets in the last 2 weeks that he's played. 14 targets have led to 7 receptions for 45 yards. Not a great performance, playing 89% of the snaps. And the game after that had 7 targets with only 1 reception, 26 yards, and 87% of the snaps. So when I think about this, DJ Chark is absolutely being underutilized. And not only that, when I go and I watch the games against Detroit and the Los Angeles Chargers this year, and just the last 2 games that he played, Gardner Minshew is doing nothing to help DJ Chark. Sure, he's targeting him heavily, but the value of those targets are not good enough. And I think Jake Luton coming into this offense, the rookie out of Oregon State, could potentially give a little bit of life to this offense, because what Gardner Minshew's kind of turned into this year, and perhaps he was like this last year and I didn't watch him enough. This year, he is a check down guy. He is always looking for potentially his first read. Otherwise, he's checking the ball down. If we can get a quarterback into this offense, playing against the Houston Texans secondary, that gives up a lot of points to opposing wide receivers, then potentially you could have yourselves an opportunity to play DJ Chark this week and find yourself some success. Because again, this offense runs through DJ Chark and James Robinson. Outside of them, obviously there are a couple supporting players in Keelan Cole and Laviska Shenault, but they're not the playmakers like DJ Chark is. So when I look at what the Houston Texans has given up to the opposing wide receiver position, sure, they played against the Jacksonville Jaguars a couple weeks back, and DJ Chark didn't do anything, only had 4 total targets. When I look at what other teams have done, Devontae Adams as of late, 13 catches, 196 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Just A.J. Brown, 5 catches, 58 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. Adam Thielen, 8 catches, 114 yards, and a touchdown. The Houston Texans secondary is not good enough. They do not have enough talent back there, and all it takes is a good quarterback to come in and help DJ Chark elevate to the next level. I'm hoping that because Jake Luton is going to be the starting quarterback this week and we have a replacement, we are going to see a different type of approach from the Jacksonville Jaguars offense. That's the hope, because to be honest, at this point, anything could be better than what Minshew is allowing DJ Chark to at least get in terms of opportunity. So that is my second hidden gem for this upcoming week. We move on to our next hidden gem, throw up DJ Chark, and we move on to the reality stone or the ether. We go to the collector to collect the reality stone. And as of right now, the reality of the situation for the New York Giants backfield is that Devonta Freeman will be out this upcoming week. He is still dealing with his injury. And Wayne Gallman, my goodness, has been stepping up in the last 2 weeks. In his last 2 performances, since coming into the game against the Philadelphia Eagles, where originally Devonta Freeman got injured, and then of course taking over and being the full-time offensive starting running back against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it's been a really big transition for him. And to be honest, he's acted upon the opportunity. The fact that he scored a touchdown each of the last 2 weeks makes a huge difference. In terms of overall fantasy points, that is what's getting him over the 10-point mark. But as long as this team wants to consistently run the ball as much as they have and utilize Wayne Gallman as a running back, we're going to continue to see him succeed. Again, the fact that he's had a total of 22 rushing attempts in the last 2 weeks, perfectly fine with that. He's had 5 total targets in the game against the Philadelphia Eagles for 5 receptions. Now, that didn't translate into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game as we saw more utilization of Dion Lewis. But again, he is still a capable receiving back and the options there. He's playing about 50 to 45% of the offensive snaps in this backfield as of right now. And the fact that he was able to succeed against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers front 7, the defense that gives up the least amount of yards to opposing running backs this season, makes me think not only is this offensive line kind of starting to pick it up, but this offense is starting to compete more. I mean, they almost beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football, which gives me a little bit of confidence that maybe this team is going in the right direction. I mean, their division is not completely out of their hands, and they could technically still get into it. They play against the division rival this week. They play against the Washington Football Team. The last time that the New York Giants, back in Week 6, played against the Washington Football Team, Devonta Freeman had a total of 18 rushing attempts. So they're going to run the ball probably heavily against that team. They're going to utilize Wayne Gallman. I think this is a guy that is only owned in 21% of Yahoo leagues as of right now, can be picked up and potentially played as a flex option if, in fact, you are in need of one. I think Wayne Gallman's a great option in a pretty decent matchup this week, and that is why I'm writing him as this week's reality stone. We throw him up on the screen, And we go ahead and move on to the Soul Stone. Now, as we all know, the Soul Stone requires a sacrifice. And even though Kenny Golladay and Matthew Stafford, that is a double sacrifice this week. Even though that's the case, I still think that having the number one wide receiver on this team and the number one quarterback on this team out still helps benefit Marvin Jones. And I'll tell you why. Marvin Jones has, by far, in my opinion, the best matchup of the week in comparison to all other wide receivers in the National Football League. The fact that you can play against the Minnesota Vikings, we know that the Minnesota Vikings aren't the best secondary, but they are missing all three of their starting cornerbacks this week. I'll read it out. Holton Hill, out. Mark Felds, out. Cameron Dantzler, out. And on top of it, Harrison Hand, questionable. He could potentially miss. I know Gladney's going to play. Good luck, Gladney. You're going to have your hands pretty much full with Marvin Jones Jr. Now, I'll tell you exactly why. In the last 2 weeks, of course, Marvin Jones Jr. has kind of gotten himself more and more utilized in this offense. He's played 90% of the snaps back in week 7, and then in week 8 had himself 98% of the offensive snaps. As of the last couple weeks, 6 targets leading to 5 receptions, 80 yards, 7 targets leading to 3 receptions, 39 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Has scored 27.9 fantasy points in the last 2 weeks in half PPR scoring formats. Now, on top of that, Marvin Jones always succeeds against the Minnesota Vikings. In his last 4 games against the Minnesota Vikings, he's totaled 37 targets, 25 receptions, 306 yards, and 6 receiving touchdowns. On that 4-game average, it's 6 catches, 77 yards, and 1.5 touchdowns per game. And I know that huge 4 receiving touchdown game last year is playing a huge difference in there, but there are still a couple games here and there in which he's getting huge yardage and also scoring against the Minnesota Vikings. They don't have a single starting cornerback this week. And I think even with Chase Daniel at quarterback, a lot of people think Chase Daniel, he's not great. He's just a backup. There's a reason why he is still in the National Football League, and there's a reason why he's getting as much money as he's currently being paid. He goes around back and forth to different organizations. He's been on the Kansas City Chiefs recently, the Chicago Bears, and now the Detroit Lions, because he is a viable second-string quarterback that can come in and help win games. In the last 4 contests that he started with the Chicago Bears as their starting quarterback, his offenses have averaged 22 points per game. So again, Chase Daniel, not a bad option. Marvin Jones, only owned in 79% of the league, probably is not going to be started by many of you guys because you're worried about the quarterback play. I think is a great option this upcoming week. We move on, we throw them up on the screen, and we have the time stone for this upcoming week. Last week we talked about Tua, another young quarterback, and now I want to talk about Drew Lock. Drew Lock had an incredible performance against the Los Angeles Chargers this past week. 26 completions on 41 passing attempts, had himself 248 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and a game-winning buzzer-beater touchdown to KJ Hamler in the end zone. Turned over the ball once via interception, but scored 92 points in a 4-point per passing touchdown format. The way I see it, Drew Lock is a quarterback that, even last season, at the end of the season, he'd won, 4 out of his 5 starts, was consistently getting in the right direction. With an improved offense this year, we thought, okay, Drew Lock could potentially be a better quarterback in his second year and at least take a couple steps forward. Early in the season, obviously dealing with that shoulder injury and the rotation of quarterbacks, we all kind of looked at the Denver situation and thought, Cortland Sutton's out, the wide receivers aren't producing, and maybe Melvin Gordon or Phillip Lindsay, but outside of that, we're really not going to be interested fantasy-wise in this offense. But as of late, since they finally stabilized their quarterback position, we've progressively seen the improvement of Drew Lock, and last week was the culmination of that. And I think going into this upcoming week, playing against the Atlanta Falcons, not only are they giving up a lot of points to opposing quarterbacks, opposing tight ends, opposing wide receivers, opposing running backs, they're giving up points to just about anybody. But they play against a team that is getting in the right spot. They're getting into the right frame of mind. And as of right now, I think there is a potential that Drew Lock could take advantage of this incredible matchup, utilize his threats. They have a lot of wide receivers on this team. They've got a lot of talented ones. Besides going out and getting a Jerry Jeudy, you still have Tim Patrick, Deshaun Hamilton, and KJ Hamler, who can still consistently produce when given opportunity. You still have 2 stud tight ends, and you have an offensive line that as of right now has played better than they did last year. I know they've been dealing with a couple injuries on the interior of their offensive line, a couple COVID situations, but Drew Lock, in my opinion, this upcoming week against the Atlanta Falcons is not a bad option as a streaming option. I throw it out there. I know many of you might not go with it. You don't have to. Again, there are probably better streaming options. We talked about them on our quarterback rankings list, but I just want to go ahead and give you guys my opinion on Drew Lock. I still think that he could potentially perform very well this upcoming week against the Atlanta Falcons. And that is why he is our time stone for this upcoming week. All right, we move on to the last hidden gem for this upcoming week, we have ourselves Tony Pollard. Now, I don't put Tony Pollard on the screen saying, hey, you have to start Tony Pollard this week. Understand, guys, that when I do hidden gems every single week, my purpose is not to go ahead and name a random player and just hope. I have actual thoughts on the matter, and I think to myself, okay, everything is going in the right direction. It's a great matchup. They've been playing well. This person's hurt. There's an opportunity here. Everything that I do calculates to, okay, this is probably a decision in which I want to make, right? I don't just throw it out there and just say, forget about it. No. Everything I do has a consequence, and I know many of you have started players that have definitely hurt you, but the whole point of Tony Pollard isn't to start him. It's to pick him up and have him on your roster, especially if you're a Zeke owner right now. Zeke is currently dealing with a hamstring injury, and the way I see it, if in fact this Dallas Cowboys offense is going in the wrong direction and they're going to have a hurt Zeke, they're not going to want to play him. They're going to eventually want to pull him out, and Tony Pollard is the backup, and he actually had more fantasy points than Zeke last week. So again, the opportunity is there. Zeke is only owned in 20% of leagues, and there's no stats for me to say, hey, Zeke is automatically going to produce. But if you go back to last season, he was one of the most elusive backs in the National Football League, according to Pro Football Focus. So again, he has had himself his opportunity, his fair share, and he's produced in the past. This is not to say, again, that you should start him this week. That's absolutely not the case. You should go ahead and potentially consider picking him up, because if in fact this offense moves away from Zeke and decides to themselves, you know what, we're pretty much out of contention. Let's not waste our starting running back, or at least, let's not, take a couple extra hits that he doesn't have to. Let's hand the ball off to Tony Pollard. Let's get him more utilization, and then we'll see what happens going forward. So again, Tony Pollard's a suggestion as a waiver wire pickup, just throwing it out there for those of you who are interested. Those are our 6 hidden gems for this upcoming week. I want to thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate your guys' support. We can go ahead and move on and recap everything that we've talked about today. These are our 6 hidden gems for week 9 of the 2020 fantasy football season. As of course, we'll go ahead and repeat it again. J.K. Dobbins is our power stone. DJ Chark as our space stone. We have Wayne Gallman as the reality stone. Marvin Jones as the soul stone, of course, sacrificing 2 players in that one. We have ourselves Drew Lock as a time stone. And last but not least, Tony Pollard as the mind stone. Thank you everybody for watching. And until tomorrow, we'll talk about some strength of schedules. I'll see you guys. Peace.